On a narrow ridge deep in the hills of Hoosier National Forest in Jackson County, Indiana, there is a unique and isolated location that could easily be overlooked by the casual observer. The place is known as Hominy Mortar, named so for the long-told story that the rocks were once used by Native Americans to grind corn and other grains. However, the experts consulted by the U.S. Forest Service discount this theory and claim that the unusual pockmarks in the stones at Hominy Mortar are of natural origin. Though no source or reference are listed for this claim, through logic and reasoning we can assess how plausible it would be for the stones to be human-made artifacts rather than a natural formation. Hominy Mortar is located on a steep and narrow topographic formation known as Fork Ridge, and the rocks are near one of the tallest summits on the ridge. This area was not covered by any known glaciations, but the glaciers did approach the area and caused flooding in the valleys below. The exposure of large sandstone blocks at Hominy Mortar is unusual for Fork Ridge, though the formation at Browning Mountain, 4.5 miles to the northwest, has a similar and much more extensive set of boulders. The rocks at Hominy Mortar are part of the Borden Geologic Group and appear to be in situ and unmoved from their location of original deposition. There are some natural geologic processes that could form similar rounded holes in rocks, either through depositional heterogeneity or through specific types of erosion. A good example of an erosional process are the potholes that can be found along glacial waterways, formed by strong currents and eddies, drilling holes into the bedrock with time. But we have already established that the glaciers did not cover this area, and it seems highly unlikely that outwash from nearby glaciers could cause a flood that would cover Hominy Mortar. Browning Mountain has dozens of boulders exposed, but none of them contain similar depressions to those seen at Hominy Mortar. A close examination of the rocks at Hominy Mortar reveals that there are actually a series of depressions. One is very round and deep, but others have more of a funnel or bowl shape. Multiple indentations of variable shape would be advantageous for processing different types and sizes of grains and letting the finer bits settle out. This could also be evidence that the site has been visited for a considerable amount of time, with some mortars becoming worn and broken with prolonged use. Though sandstone like the type found at Hominy Mortar is rather resistant to weathering, the nature of being composed of grains of sand cemented together means that it is possible to manually break away specific grains and etch grooves and depressions with enough time and determination. The question then becomes, why would early humans climb to the top of a steep ridge to grind corn? Humans have inhabited this part of Indiana for at least 10,000 years, and for most of that time it is likely that they were cultivating and processing corn. As corn does not grow well on steep terrain and favors flat, wet, rich valley bottoms, the hills of central Indiana offer limited suitable land for that sort of agriculture. Hominy Mortar exists at the top of a steep ridge, but if we zoom out and look to the north and south, the flooded glacial outwash valleys of Little Salt Creek and the South Fork Salt Creek form an ideal setting for corn production. Hominy Mortar, on a rocky summit almost perfectly centered between these two valleys, would be a logical place for one to give offerings to a higher power for a bountiful harvest. This is to say, I believe that Hominy Mortar was a ceremonial site that is strategically located in a place of great importance to the local indigenous population. Being able to grow and process corn was essential to survive the harsh winters and thrive in such a rugged landscape. The valleys surrounding Hominy Mortar, now home to the quaint farming towns of Houston and Kurtz, may have once been agricultural centers for a booming indigenous population. Hominy Mortar, with a commanding view of the surrounding landscape, remains a special place for those who venture to the windswept ridges and recognize the remnant artifacts from a civilization whose history and traditions have actively been erased.